Hello. So this is my third video and my last attempt in clarifying what I mean about how, in my opinion, we could act as to best represent ourselves in this movement that is pushing away the devouring mother. And Peterson seems to be at the helm of this movement of revivifying the benevolent father and the nurturing mother combo, roughly characterized by Sargon as the liberalist stance, and keeping the tyrannical father, that would be the far right or the alt-right, at bay. The hero's duty is to pull order out of too much chaos and to introduce chaos into too much order. Now here's the phrase going around: you have to risk being offensive. So here's exactly what Peterson said, and please excuse my low-tech way of including this.
To freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like, you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Now here's what he said on Tucker Carlson.
If you could pass on one piece of life advice, and this really is a book of life advice, to our viewers, what would it be?
Stop saying things that make you weak.
What does that mean?
Well, if you pay attention to what you say, you'll know that sometimes you feel like you're standing on a rock, that you're in a solid place, and I suppose that you're speaking from your heart. And other times you're saying things just to look good and just to buttress your particular status at the time, and that makes you feel weak. You sell yourself out. And if you pay attention to what you say, you can tell when you're making yourself stronger, and you can tell when you're making yourself weaker. And unless you want to be weaker, then I would say it's best to say those things that make you strong. And you can learn to do that, and it's really useful. So I would recommend practicing that, because it's good for you and good for everyone else too. And
So here's how I see the phrase, you have to risk being offensive. It feels good to offend those who have been offending you for so long. I totally get that. It feels good to be offensive when you're pushed hard enough. And many of you, most of you, and me, have been and are sick of the status quo ideology of the devouring mother. However, you have to risk being offensive doesn't mean being offensive out of spite or out of resentment. It means saying what you really mean, what you really mean. Your synthesis of what Peterson or anyone else who says things that are truly meaningful to you in the context of your own embodied true beliefs. If you're pursuing quality, you are directed by quality or meaning or the highest good to speak the truth. You know what truth is. You feel it. You feel it's right. It emerges. The emergence of truth is what I'm trying to describe with the term quality, which I've taken, of course, from Zam. So to be the hero is characterized by Peterson and Carl Jung, and in mythology is to stand up to the status quo once it becomes pathological. It is to be informed by truth. So you speak the truth without filtering out what is actually necessary to convey the truth. That is what I think Peterson means by the necessity of taking the risk to be offensive. However, I don't think Peterson is giving a green light to being offensive. He is saying if you need to be offensive in order to think through to the truth and to speak the truth, then so be it. But here's a thought. You can also be offensive because it's easier to adopt the prevailing outrage instead of thinking. It's easier to just repeat what your side is saying rather than formulate your own interpretation of it. So let me restate the Peterson quote. In order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. But don't be offensive in order to avoid thinking. So I hope it made sense, and I'll see you next time.